All right, so everybody is asking me to try to make sense of the situation at Twitter, this dumpster fire that's been going on for the last couple of weeks. And so I will try a professional marketer's perspective, a balanced perspective as much as I'm capable of doing, because I'm just seeing all of this politics, all of this emotion, this drama. Let's try to get down to the facts and what's actually happening, which is what I think you're here for, starting with Elon stepping down as CEO, or at least running a poll saying, should I step down as CEO? I will abide by the results. 57% say yes, 43% say no. As of yet, as of the time of this filming, he has not stepped down as CEO. Starting with that, I'm just going to give a quick overview. I have not brought out a lot of evidence for this. I'm just going to kind of give my opinions from the advertiser world, what I'm seeing advertisers talk about. We're the people that power Twitter. We're the people that run hundreds of thousands of dollars of ads on Twitter. So we're going to give you that perspective sort of as genuine as I can from the people that I'm talking to and from what we're doing with our ads. So this whole thing, I think Elon always was intending to find a new CEO. I don't think he ever intended to really run it for the full time. And you can see in November 16th, AP News covered something where Elon already said that he was going to expect to find a new Twitter CEO. So I'm not surprised to see this poll come out and for him to eventually step down. Now, there's a couple of caveats to this, and Elon has mentioned that the difficulty in really stepping down from Twitter is who is going to make it profitable. That is the real problem with Twitter right now, is that it is in debt up to its eyeballs. It is ostracizing advertisers, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And there's some really important things for you to know there that you want to stay tuned for. And it's just going to be hard to find a CEO who's actually going to turn this over to be profitable. It would have been hard even if it was under Jack Dorsey. It would have been hard no matter what. Twitter is just a hard thing to monetize. So I suspect that there was some intentional marketing here. I think that when he put that poll up, he knew well that it was going to vote yes, because it's no coincidence that he released one of the most unpopular content moderation policies. So essentially that same day, he released this policy that said that they were going to block links, outward links, like you couldn't link out to competing websites like Mastodon. If you talked about those, they might ban your account. And a notable journalist, I think it was Paul Graham, actually got banned for saying, hey, screw Twitter, come on to my Mastodon. That stuff should never happen. And it was a super unpopular move. All of Twitter was talking about it. And then like 6 hours into that, he releases this poll. Of course, everybody like votes no. So I think that, let me start off by saying maybe something that's one of the most interesting things in this video. I think that people really underestimate the power of outrage marketing. I think a lot of what I'm seeing at Twitter is very framed. It's very farmed marketing. It's Elon intentionally making certain moves that are frustrating different sides to garner effect. And if you don't believe me, you need to only look at any like YouTuber or very popular personality that does this. Like drama farming is a technique. It's a skill. It's an art. Okay. It's an art. It's a art that you can do that a lot of people know. And I think Elon is a master of outrage marketing to try to get everybody angry. So they start talking about it. So the impressions go up. We are at an all-time high in terms of Twitter users. We're at an all-time high in terms of engagement, and I don't think that's an accident. I think that a lot of this is planned. So I think that this whole kind of CEO grift thing is probably intentional marketing. I do think that Elon will step down as CEO eventually when he finds a person that he thinks can do it. Now, you might wonder what I voted. Yes or no for him to step down, as I've been somewhat of a proponent of this like acquisition, and there's been quite a bit of bumpy stuff, and we'll talk about that. But you know, it's like, okay, like you want to buy a company and take it private, that's your right to do, whatever. Hopefully it goes well, and it looks like some of the plans for Twitter involve benefiting content creators, which is something I'm a big fan of as one myself, and as educating a bunch of content creators. So okay, if you step down as CEO, what does that really look like? And I thought that my theory is, and I voted yes, and the reason I voted yes on why Elon should step down as CEO is I just want him to focus on the really big projects that he should be, that I think he ought be focusing on, such as going to Mars and providing electric vehicles for the entire world. Those seem like really good problems rather than like shit posting on Twitter all day, which just seems like a low quality problem for someone like him to solve. It's like, if you can revolutionize the car market, you can revolutionize how we get to space, like work on that and just go back into behind the scenes. Now there's some ego there that I don't think will let him ever like really get out of the Twitter space, but I'm not the only one that thinks this. There's a lot of people at Tesla who are super concerned that Elon is just like not focusing on Tesla. Tesla's stock is plummeting, and SpaceX is probably not doing that well. That's a private company, so we don't know. But like, it's clear that Elon's focus is almost entirely on this Twitter company. And look, a town square, a council, a place where this discussion needs to happen. This is important. We need to focus on this. But I just think that this is maybe not the person to do it. He's a technologist. He's an engineer. He is in his best element just building things for humanity, and he's done some really cool stuff like that. And there's more stuff on the horizon, like chips inside of our brains or robots and stuff. Like, all that stuff is kind of sci-fi-y, but who knows how far it'll go. And as long as Elon is focusing on Twitter, he can't do that stuff as much, and I don't like that, so I voted yes. Now, I also think that Elon is realizing some things from trying to basically be the world's head moderator. And that is that you cannot say anything on the internet without pissing off 50% of the people on the other side of whatever that issue is, especially if you get political. Then you really can't do it in America. America is so divided in terms of left and right that if you say anything that is like, oh, that's too conservative, or that's too left, or that's too right, the other 50% are like, it's like Elon has somehow managed to piss off everybody simultaneously. And I think that was his goal. I think that he intended to piss everybody off because, again, he's driving these users up. So let's go over some of the kind of controversial decisions that he's made that I've been getting asked a lot about. Devin, provide the advertiser perspective. For people that don't know, I run an agency called Nova. We run a lot of Twitter ads. We run hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of ads per year on platforms like this. So I'll just give you our perspective on kind of like what is happening with the space. So the first thing that really surprised me in terms of recent decisions was the unbanning of these high-profile Twitter accounts. He started with Jordan Peterson and Kathy Griffin, later did the Babylon Bee and Donald Trump, Andrew Tate, some of these really controversial figures that even like YouTube or other people have banned. And this surprised me. This surprised me because from an advertiser perspective, this is a super stupid thing to do. Those Twitter profiles, to varying degrees, are super advertiser unfriendly, and those controversial takes are things that make a lot of Fortune 500 brands and a lot of brands like feel unsafe and not want to be a part of the platform. So we've seen a lot of advertising dollars pull away from Twitter, I think, as a result of a lot of these controversial bans. A lot of people will say that like the advertisers are pulling away because of like the job layoffs or the media coverage or whatever. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, the engagement is the engagement and the market is the market. Like, we're happy to advertise on Twitter if there's a ton of people doing it. And the engagement, there's a ton of people, we're happy to advertise on Twitter if there's a ton of people to watch it, if there's a ton of people to see it. But when you start unbanning controversial figures, and then simultaneously your your content moderation policy for those figures is like sort of coming to fit their narrative, like this sort of idea of a digital town square starts to run into the same problem that platforms like Parler and platforms like Rumble have, which is like, you can post anything you want on this platform. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. And like, I kind of believe in that from a I think we all sort of like believe in the idea of writing anything we want from a sort of fundamental rights perspective. But from an advertiser perspective, like, man, you can't do that. like as soon as any of that kind of stuff is perceived as really controversial, advertisers will pull away and they'll put their dollars into stuff that's going to guarantee them more safety, because they don't want those emails from people that are saying, hey, I'm not comfortable, I won't buy your brand anymore because I just don't feel like you're representing my best interest by advertising here. That does happen. That does happen to a lot of these high-profile brands, and it scares them. It's one of the biggest things you can do as a consumer is you can advertise, you can email brands or agencies like us and say, hey, I'm not comfortable like running these ads. And then if they stop doing it, if enough people stop doing it, it really affects it. So we've seen a lot of ads pull away from Twitter. I don't think it's for the standard reasons. Another reason why a lot of people have pulled ads very recently is the suspension of journalists. This is just a super bad move, and I can only think that this was like, I'm not even going to say this was like the conspiracy for Elon to try to set up to like get the no vote on CEO. I think this was just a dumb move. I don't know what he was thinking here. So this started because the account Elon Jet was tracing his jet around the world and tracking where he would land at airports. All these people would set up there and they would take pictures of him and they would wait for him to come out. Now, I totally get that. It's probably really frustrating to have somebody tracking everything you do, even though the FAA publishes that data. It's actually public data. I think it's called the ICC code, something like that, where the airplane just has a code, and you can just track it, yourself. There's a lot of apps that do it. So this is by no means like Elon called this doxing. I don't think it's doxing really. I think it's like using public data. Now there's some debate, should the FAA be tracking every airline, especially private airlines, maybe not, and making that public data. But as far as like doxing goes, Elon ended up banning quite a few journalists who were retweeting that account or reposting that information, and that felt really bad. And that again was like it sort of shook up the advertising world, and we're kind of nervous about that. So this just shows, I think, that Elon is a very good entrepreneur. He's a very good engineer. He's a very good technologist. But he's not so good at content moderation, and you can't be good at everything. So I feel like this kind of goes back to like why I voted yes on this like step down as CEO thing. I don't know who the person is that runs this platform. I just don't feel like it's Elon. He just doesn't seem to be able to make the decisions for the long term that a CEO needs in this position. You need to have like a 4-year or like a 5-year plan. And Elon, it's very clear by his decisions that he makes that he fires from the hip. You can't do that in moderation, right? You have to really think about the long-term consequences of what you're doing. So from the advertiser perspective, we see these short-form moderator decisions, and we don't really know. When I'm doing a campaign, right? Like oftentimes the structure of a campaign that we do is called a 210, which means we'll run ads or we'll do a creative campaign with an influencer or whatever we do. We'll do it for a brand for 2 months. And if it works and the KPIs make sense and the numbers make sense, we'll go on for 10 months, right? So if we don't even know what that 2 months is, we don't even know what's going to like, does anyone know what's going to happen at Twitter in 2 months? I have no idea what's going to happen at Twitter in 2 months. So I'm not going to recommend advertisers go there and we're going to spend ad dollars there, much less 10 months, right? So if I can't guarantee my brands a stable platform or safety, then we're not going to advertise there. We'll go to somewhere else. Like TikTok looks like really stable right now, or we'll go like even to like Facebook or wherever else, right? Where we could probably guarantee the same engagement and numbers, but we're not like, we just don't know what's going to happen. So this uncertainty, right? Like the stock market doesn't like uncertainty. Advertisers don't like uncertainty. We don't like uncertainty. So we're pulling back a lot. And that's, if you see like that happening on Twitter, that's why. Now that becomes especially relevant because 90% of Twitter's revenue is ad driven. So all of the decisions that agencies make, and this is all the agencies that I'm talking to and corresponding with, those agencies making these decisions basically are the lifeline of Twitter, more or less. Like that's, Twitter is not going to be able to monetize anytime soon via Twitter Blue and like the $8 subscription. Elon has talked about, and this is like the most kind of exciting thing to me, there needs to be some way to reward content creators that produce video and tweet content so that it encourages more content to exist on Twitter, which then can be run ads against. That is a long-term vision. It doesn't seem to me that Elon really understands how to do that. And so I think that Elon is best served as a technologist, and we need like a long-term visionary for Twitter. And I don't know who that is. I don't know if that person even exists, because at this level of being a CEO, at the level that can moderate and run, that is a hard thing to do. It's most likely going to be a person who really works in the background while Elon kind of does the marketing. The thing that Elon is just incredible at, that I watched him do at Tesla and I was amazed by, I've watched him do for SpaceX, is the media, the earned media is a concept that earned media means the media that you get covered on you without you having to pay for it. Just the amount of people that want to talk about Elon constantly because of these controversial decisions and the deliberate actions that he takes to make people talk about Twitter, whether it be like the unbans or the layoffs, everything. He is so good at it. And so I think he's actually really good as like a promoter and like the head of like Twitter in the background. I think it's very clear, we've seen from the past several days, that he shouldn't be making the key decisions on moderation on the platform. I don't have any problem with the other decisions that he's made for the company, which a lot of people do. Like he cut 50% of the workforce, and I think that was absolutely necessary. absolutely necessary. There were tons of concerns a couple of weeks ago that Twitter was going to be dead in the water, that there were going to be huge structural engineering failures, that everything was going to be a nightmare, nothing would run. Of course, we didn't see any of that. I don't think there's been a single minute of downtime. Some services have been kind of questionable, like Twitter Spaces, like kind of faded in and out for a while there, but the platform works fine. And I think that this is one of those sort of Silicon Valley things where a lot of people just didn't need these jobs. Let me rephrase that. That was not what I meant. A lot of Twitter didn't need these jobs. Those people probably needed those jobs. But Twitter, just like 11,000 people being laid off from Meta, people being laid off at Salesforce, people being laid off at Coupa, people being laid off at Stripe. Like, we're seeing thousands and thousands of layoffs across the tech industry because over the last 10 to 11 years of this bull cycle, we've just seen it get bloated. There's been too many people that are doing jobs, that random PM stuff that they just don't really contribute to anything. So I think the layoffs at Twitter were absolutely necessary. Elon recently had a really controversial email that he sent out that read like this, and surprised a lot of people. And it said, a week and a half after the first wave of layoffs, the drama intensified. Musk issued an ultimatum to employees: work harder or quit. In a midnight email to staff, Musk wrote, moving forward, Twitter will need to be extremely hardcore, require employees to work long hours at high intensity. The email linked to a form asking employees to confirm that they want to work at the new Twitter by 5 p.m. ET the next day. If not, they'd be laid off and receive 3 months severance. This got a lot of negative media attention. It looks pretty evil. Like, name a more evil thing for like the anti-work crowd, right? and you get this, okay? A zealous billionaire telling everybody to work harder. That looks really bad. But here's the deal, and this is my take, okay? And I guess I'm biased also as an employer. I think that jobs should be difficult. I don't think that like the Twitter stuff that was happening before was crazy. People were spending their entire day in the cafe eating 5-star food, on their laptop on the roof, doing nothing, browsing social media, whatever, doing like maybe a couple hours of work a week. I just don't think that's acceptable. And one of the reasons why I love recessions is because it really roots out the companies and the people that don't hang and aren't willing to really put in the work. So I think that Elon offering 3 months of severance is pretty generous, and basically saying, look, like, if we want to make this company work, it's either all these people really step it up and gear up for this, or the company is not going to work and none of us are going to have jobs. That is the real reality of business that people may or may not want to accept. And I just think that we've lived in such easy times for so long that the tech industry especially didn't realize that at some point the piper comes calling, and like, we've got to make it make sense. The revenue's got to make sense. The valuation's got to make sense, right? We saw this in the esports community. If you watch this YouTube channel a lot, you'll see that I cover esports a lot, and I've talked about the enormous overvaluations in esports that make no sense. Or these companies that are worth $200, $300, $400 million. And we saw with FaZe Clan when they IPO, and we actually saw a market example of that when FaZe went with a SPAC and tried to IPO, that from an esports perspective, that made no sense. The shareholders didn't believe it. They said, this is not worth those hundreds of $millions, and the stock plummeted to this day, right? So these companies aren't making money. And so if they're not making money and they're not making a valuation, then like, they're overpaying people and they can't get by on all this debt. So it has to make sense. Elon, I think, understands that, and I think he's a great leader from that perspective. And then from the content moderation perspective, that is just such a impossible task. We've talked about it on this channel before, that moderating content is such a just daunting task because you are inevitably going to make everybody upset no matter what you do. And I just think that's going to continue as long as he's at the head of it. I think that you need a shadow moderation council that kind of works off of popular opinion. I do think it's a very good idea for them to keep polling people. The problem is, like, I don't know how much those polls are gamed. It looks like what they're going to be doing on Twitter now is they're going to be making those polls only for subscribers. So people that are paying $8 for Twitter. I actually am a fan of that. Maybe some of you may not be, but I actually like the idea of polls being from paid people, because those are the people with skin in the game in the platform. I don't think that, number one, I think that a lot of free polling invites a lot of bots. and I don't like that. And number two, I think it also invites a lot of grifters and trolls, and we shouldn't be making content moderation decisions or really any decisions on the back of people that aren't actually invested in the platform. This is the whole reason why companies have shareholders, because the shareholders want the company's value to increase, and so the company kind of serves the shareholders. When Twitter was a public company, it had to do that just because of the way that a public company works. Now that it's a private company, some of the only accountability we have is maybe paid subscribers actually doing polls. So I'm a fan of that, or just like kind of polls existing in general. But when I first made my Twitter video, the original Twitter video on the Devin Nash channel was 7 months ago. And I said 7 months ago, I said Elon is going to have a really hard time with just the number of people that disagree, because that's the nature of this, running the kind of platform like this, and it's come to pass, right? Like I don't think that him stepping down as CEO is some sort of sudden realization that he can't run Twitter. I just don't think that his ego would allow that, and I also don't think that was his plan from the beginning. As I showed, even as early as November, we saw him saying that he was going to find a new CEO anyway. So this is a marketing ploy. A lot of people have asked me about this and like kind of asked me to make sense of this. I'm telling you it's a marketing ploy. I'm telling you it's outrage marketing. People do not understand how like, if there's one thing I could tell you as a professional marketer, okay, on authority, seeing this every day, how much of the advertising you see, the content that you watch, whether it be on like television or like Netflix or whatever, is geared to make you feel a certain way. That marketers sit in rooms and they think about the emotional impact that something is going to have. And if they say people are going to hate this is going to be a really negative emotional impact, there is a good percentage of marketers who are like, sounds good, send that out there, okay? The traditional media has become experts at it. If you look at any of the like television, any major news channel is not as important. The subject of the story is not as important as what you feel from the story. So everything is generated to make you feel a certain way. And usually that's like outrage, fear, scarcity, such like that. And I see people just falling into this endless pit of just people falling into this idea, like just buying into these ideas, but these ideas are just generated in a factory. Like Elon and whatever marketing team is behind him is generating a lot of these ideas in factories and saying, this is going to provoke this kind of emotional response. This is going to drive that kind of user engagement. This is going to, now they don't like entirely know. It's not like the Illuminati. They know like 100% what is going to happen. But there's been like, especially someone like Elon, who's been doing this for years and years and years. Like he gamed everybody with Tesla. He got everybody on board with that. He knows what he's doing. And so this, like, I don't like if you're looking at this, you're trying to make sense of this logically. The logic is in when you realize that a lot of this is a deliberate effort to get media covering him, to get everybody shouting at each other, to get user engagement up to an all-time high, to attract advertisers back, and it's just a coordinated plan. And I would say about like 70 to 80% of the stuff that has happened on Twitter has been that so far, with the other like 20 to 30% just being really stupid decisions, just genuinely dumb decisions from a person who's never like content moderated at that level, and difficult decisions, right? Like, so it's funny because like I've been like blasted as an Elon supporter, I've been blasted as an Elon hater. I've kind of gone like back and forth because I really try to bring a balanced perspective that is like not politically leaning. I do my best. And it's funny, like I was not a fan of Tesla, and then when Twitter started happening, I was like, man, he's going to have some problems with this content moderation. Lo and behold, he did. And this is sort of played out to pass. So I kind of like hope that this sort of makes sense of a lot of things. It really starts to make sense in the perspective when you watch what his actual actions are and what is changing. So you look at something like the content moderation policy. I think that's really important. This kind of speaks to this, where he releases this policy, says no more linking to Mastodon, no more linking to competitor websites, we're done. Everybody freaks out and he goes, of course we're not going to do that. And by the way, everything will be polls from now on. So we're just going to walk that back, no problem. Whoops. But think about the earned media, the engagement that he got from that. I mean, millions and millions and millions of impressions. Everybody is talking about Twitter, right? I think there's a lot of deliberate effort in that comes from a person who's very good at outrage marketing. So it starts to make sense when you look at that perspective. perspective. And maybe that will be hard for you to believe. Maybe you just think that Elon is a bumbling idiot who is just making dumb decisions and stumbling into everything. I will tell you on authority that I don't think that people get to the billions of dollars mark and build 2 successful companies, including one public company that has introduced EVs to the world, by not understanding traditional marketing. I think you got to give a person more credit than that, even if you're in like the super hate billionaires, angry rich people crowd. Yeah. So overall, I just think like Elon has a philosophy of just moving fast and breaking things. Like just it's Silicon Valley on turbo speed. Like break everything, whatever works, we keep that. That's good. Everything broken and all the people that get broken along with it, whether they be employees or fans or whatever, yeah, screw all them. We're gonna keep going, and like that is a great model for a technology company. That's a great model when you're trying to send people to space and you're trying to figure out new technology and new engines, and you're trying to you're trying to as safely progress as possible, but as fast as possible, and you're okay to break things like along the way. That does not work for the long-term vision of a like Twitter type of company, which really relies on somebody that can step back and say like, what does the next 5 to 10 years of our discussion and our ecosystem look like? What do we need to do to ensure that that is like the most safe and welcoming community as possible, while simultaneously being able to cover these big issues that may be really controversial. And where I end up on that, just like as a sort of summary, is I think I'm a huge fan of intellectual, empirically backed discussion about any topic. I really hate when we get into dogma, and I hate when we get into fundamental like ideologies that start to shape the discussion in a way that moves away from empirical evidence and data. And I think that Elon is sort of falling into his own trap in a way, because he bought Twitter under the idea of releasing it from ideology. That Twitter was a historically left-leaning platform, which is undebatable. I mean, there's 97% of all donations made by Twitter employees were to Democratic parties. There's no question that Twitter was a very left-leaning platform as an ideology. And Elon had a problem with that, and now is kind of leaning it over to the right and more of his ideology, instead of making it what it should be, which is an open, neutral town square where both parties can actually discuss something. Because I, for one, as an American, am tired of people tearing themselves apart over political boundaries. I've been called, it's so crazy, covering this Twitter issue, I've been called an extreme left person, an extreme right person, just by whoever like wants to label or identify me. And I've seen my friends and other people covering this the same way, that it's like, I really want a neutral town square where people can come together and be like, let's just like take off that blue or red hat or whatever, put it over here and just discuss the issues and respectfully towards each other. Let's not label, let's not identify, let's do that. I think that's what Elon set out to do, but I'm worried right now, like as of the time of this filming, I'm starting to get concerned that he's inadvertently or advertently moving this platform into his own ideology. And I don't care if that ideology is left or right. It's not good to just if all we do is we just flip over and turn the other way. That's not good. Like, we're not creating that open town square of that great discussion that I think the world really desperately needs right now, and is why Twitter is such an important project. So if Elon is going to move away from space and from new technology, then at least keep the platform neutral and put that work into it. I worry about the future of Twitter at this point, not only from the debt perspective that we've talked about in previous videos. Go check those out if you want to see like a whole breakdown of like why Twitter is just in trouble. I mean, just empirically, just like from the numbers, they're in huge trouble. They have a lot of debt they have to make up. They owe a lot of money to banks, probably at and I think Elon got margin called on Tesla already. Meaning that he already had to sell Tesla stock to pay off some of the debt at Twitter. That might continue, and it's just going to be worse for Tesla and worse for all people involved. So I think that they have extremely scary financial concerns, but also concerns just on the ideological direction of the platform that is problematic right now. So that, I hope, is kind of a summary of everything that's sort of going on with Twitter. And I hope that like this was helpful, and sort of the perspective of an advertiser or the perspective of somebody that is kind of in the juice of this can kind of help out with, make sense of this world and what they're kind of thinking over there. And we'll keep making these as long as stuff keeps being interesting. And knowing Elon, I think that it will be interesting for quite a while. Hey, thank you very much. I didn't do a secret call out, so if you're at the end of the video, hey, post a comment that you made it all the way here. Thank you so much. And subscribe or check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Devin Nash. If you like more stuff like this, we cover, especially like we've covered Twitter from the perspective of content creators and people that are running businesses there. If it's a good idea to be there or not, we have a Patreon for that. $5 gets you like 90 videos. Super good deal. Thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.